There is a moment before memory, a space of pure unfiltered being, where the light is just light, and the sound is just a vibration in the air. No names. The moment is brief. It ends the instant a label is applied, the instant a boundary is drawn, the instant a should is whispered into the cradle. We arrive not as blank slates, but as an ancient hardware, ready to receive the most urgent and insistent software of our time and place. This is where it begins, not with the soul, but with a program. The first, most powerful bubble we ever inhabit isn't one we choose. It is an unrequested inheritance delivered in the first breath, woven into the first lullaby. It is the geography of our birth, the longitude and latitude that dictate not just the climate, but the gods, the flags, and the invisible rules of belonging. It is the family story, a narrative we are drafted into as both character and heir, carrying forward its victories, its traumas, its unspoken loyalties. This is the cradle, a world entire, presented as the only world. And then comes the hammer. It's rarely a single violent blow. It's a million gentle, relentless taps. The hammer is the language that contains a thought before we can think it. It is a storybook that defines a hero and the villain before we know our own heart. It is a subtle flinch of a parent at a question too bold, the approving smile for a behavior that fits. It is the history lesson that starts with we and defines a them, the religious parable that paints love as conditional, heaven as a gated community. This invisible curriculum teaches a profound and fundamental lie. The map is the territory, that the names we are given for things, for ourselves, for others, for the divine, for right and wrong, are the things themselves. An identity is built from the base handed down pieces, an identity as solid as stone and just as heavy. We are taught to see through a lens ground by a generation before us, a lens that highlights certain colors of reality and filters out others entirely. We learn where the edges of our bubble are bumping into them, and we learn to call those edges the world. Neuroscience offers a startling confirmation of this programming. The concept of neuroplasticity shows that our brain's very structure is shaped by experience. In early childhood, the brain is a wild, overconnected network. Synapses, the connection between neurons, proliferate at a staggering rate. Then, a process called synaptic pruning begins. The neural pathways that are used frequently are strengthened. Those that are neglected are trimmed away. What dictates which pathways are used? The environment. The language heard, the emotions mirrored, the behaviors rewarded or punished. The culture, in essence, carves the neural sculpture of the self. By adolescence, the fundamental architecture of perception, the very way we filter reality, is largely set, a monument to our particular cradle. This isn't a conspiracy. It is a mechanism of survival. A tribe must impart its knowledge, its warnings, its cohesion to its young, or the tribe ceases to exist. The hammer is an act of love, however flawed. The cradle is a sanctuary, however small. The problem arises not from the act of teaching, but from the forgetting that a teaching has occurred. We mistake the local dialect for the only language. We mistake the village rules for universal law. Yet, Within the very force of this hammering lies a secret gift, the first essential friction of contrast. The pain of a rule that feels arbitrary, the confusion of a truth that doesn't match lived experience, the quiet rebellion of a feeling that has no sanctioned name. These are not failures of the program. They are its saving graces. They are the points of pressure where the self, the raw, unformed consciousness beneath the conditioning, presses up against the walls of its bubble. This friction generates heat, and heat generates light. It is the origin point of the spiral. Looking back, it seems the journey to any kind of magic, any genuine awareness, could only ever start from this clear-eyed look at the original installation. To see the program as a program is the first quiet crack in the wall of a seemingly solid reality. It is a terrifying and liberating moment. The realization that the walls are made of something less permanent than stone. They are made of story, and a story can be rewritten. This brings to mind the ancient masters, the ones who saw this mechanism of cultural conditioning millennia ago. They operated not as rebels tearing down temples, but as gardeners planting seeds in the hard soil of dogma. They understood that direct instruction would be rejected, the programmer defending its code. So, they spoke in metaphor, in parable, in seemingly simple stories designed to unfold over time, like a slow-release medicine for the soul. The Buddha, born into a rigid caste system and a cosmology of endless painful rebirths, didn't just preach a new set of rules. He presented a method, a noble eightfold path that was, in essence, a user's guide to deprogramming the mind from craving and aversion, the very engines of suffering. He spoke of seeing things as they are, which is perhaps the ultimate act of looking past the culturally constructed overlay. In the Gnostic traditions that swirled around the early centuries of the Common Era, a radical seed was planted. The idea that God of this world, the creator of the material universe and its laws, was not the ultimate true God, but a lesser, ignorant being called the Demiurge. The material world, including our social and religious structures, was thus a kind of flawed simulation, a cradle of forgetting. Salvation came through gnosis, knowing, not faith, but direct experience, knowledge of one's true divine origin beyond the system. This was a metaphysical hammer against the cradle of institutional religion. Even the Sufi mystics of Islam, operating within a framework of strict law and theology, mastered this art of esoteric seeding. The poet Jalaluddin Rumi didn't lecture about oneness. He spun tales of lovers, wine and nightingales. His work is a fractal map, where the surface story delights the conditioned mind, while the deeper resonance of the metaphor works on the heart, quietly dissolving the illusion of separation between the seeker and the sought, between the self and the divine. These masters knew the hammer. They felt the cradle. And instead of using a louder hammer, they introduced a subtle, persistent vibration, a different frequency that could, over lifetimes, resonate with the innate hum of the self beneath the programming. So this first step on the spiral isn't about blame. It's not about judging the carvers or shaming the sculpture. It is about recognition. It is the act of picking up this inherited identity, this map of the world, and feeling its weight, tracing its borders, and noticing for the first time the tiny, handwritten label in the corner that reads, "Here be dragons." The dragons, of course, are the unexplored territories beyond the map's edge. The journey begins with the simple, quiet, revolutionary act of seeing the label for what it is. Not a warning, but an invitation. The awareness of the program is the first crack of light, and as the old saying goes, a crack is how the light gets in.